Welcome all to this 8th Community of Users event. Thank you very much for coming so numerous. We have a full day agenda today. You will see that there are a lot of different topics that will be discussed. We are all belonging to a community. You see that there is a nice picture representing where we are in the form of a tree. Don't hesitate to sign and paragraph if you wish. This little sketch, it will be kept to show the strength of the community. I'm very happy to welcome the Deputy Director General, Mr. Olivier Onidi, who will make the welcome address. Please, Olivier.
Thank you very much. Well, for me, it's a pleasure to welcome you in Brussels. It has become apparently a tradition to stage your activities and meetings in this wonderful place. I hope that will continue to influence positively on the quality of your discussion and also on the intensity of your work. It is indeed the 8th formal meeting of what we call this community of users. You know how important this is to us. I think at the May event, we kind of underlined the importance to actually get somewhat of a better sense of direction as to what type of research we want in the security field, to be a little bit more prescriptive also as to the type of results we want in terms of specifying a little bit more what needs to come out of the different research initiatives. Why? Simply because at the time when all member states really are requesting more to be done in the security field at European Union level, and there's a strong call. I mean, not only at the citizens level, with the publication last week of the latest Eurobarometer survey, etc., but you see this also in the political spectrum, but also on the administrative side. There is a very, very strong call. Why? Because everyone is overwhelmed by the type of threat that needs to be faced and, of course, needs to try to engineer and put in place collective actions to respond to that. And in every single dimension of what we are doing on security, probably the area which has been less developed so far is the technology, the research dimension. It's not a criticism, but I think it's a welcome development to see that research is being seen as an important, a vital factor actually that could immensely improve the overall response to the different security threats we are facing. So whenever we discuss about cyber security with the new cyber security strategy that will be presented by the Commission this week, you will see a very important chapter of this on research. Whenever we are asked to prepare a counterterrorism package, in this case on the 18th of October, we are requested when looking at topical areas such as CBRN, like the protection of public space, we are also here requested to come with new ideas, with additional elements as to how research, how technology can actually help building up our resilience and respond to the threat. And this goes really throughout the different security response aspects that we are developing. And I think it is a very, not only happy, but very useful development for the work you are conducting. It gives us much more visibility, but it gives us also much more prominence in terms of the intake. And this is the second dimension I would like to briefly allude. Your work is not only critical in guiding us as to the type of research, the type of technology, the type of response that can come out of the research world, but your work is also there to help us to try to accelerate the market uptake, so to say, to speak in simple terms, the market uptake of different technology or different research tools or results. Here as well, I think in the context of your group, we have come up with a number of, you have come up with a number of useful ideas, useful initiatives, which we are progressively building up in something that will also be presented in the context of the counterterrorism package of the 18th of October, which are basically a number of avenues in order to help the users, ministries, but also private users to actually get those research results and benefit of those quicker. So that goes through quite a number of tools that you are using already, but that we want also you to use more widely. It's the pre-commercial tendering process and so on, that you will be discussing as well in the context of today's meeting. And of course, in the context of the two following days, tomorrow and the day after, where you will have a in-depth snapshot on CBRN on the basis of one of the projects, I think, that or collection of projects that you have run on this. So just simply to tell you that on our side, the expectations, of course, are very high. We count on this type of platform also to help us to design what we will be proposing as to the next generation of research program. We see that on top of the growing interest of all decision makers as to using better and more research, and it's not only the technology angle, I think it's also what we call like the social research. Yesterday we opened and we had our first high-level expert group on radicalization, another subject where everybody is at loss to try to find the right responses. And the single item that came out of every single member state was to actually conduct more research in this area. Not only to conduct more research, but also to use better the results of research being conducted at European level, but also by a number of organizations sponsored by also national initiatives or programs. So it's another example on how research has come to the forefront. I think already for next year we have scheduled quite a number of thematic meetings. So my interest will be to keep up the pace of discussion with users, practitioners like you, for guidance and also for the improvement in terms of the deployment, in terms also of the explanation of what the work falling from research, etc., can actually do. We can do that in the context of some of the policy work that we are conducting, but we also rely heavily on you, your daily contacts with those who are actually making the decision as to what type of technology to invest in, what type of infrastructure to roll out, what type of research to be used, in order to convey the right messages and making the best use of what we do in the research world. I will leave you now in the capable hands of our colleagues, and notably Annabella. I would like just simply to thank you again for your commitment, for not only being here, but for the quality of the work that has been ongoing in this context for some time now. I'd like, of course, also to thank associated services like the JRC, and the JRC will be very prominent in today's program. And finally, thank, of course, all the colleagues within DG Research and DG Home who make all this possible and who steer that very important work. Wish you a very good day today, very productive day, very pleasant day as well, with a lot of networking and interesting discussion. And for those of you who stay in the next 2 days as well, a very interesting discussion on how to maximize the intake of this CBRN set of research work. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Onidi. We will now continue with the program and some indications about the work program 2018. Annabella, you want to come here? Just to... But before Annabella leaves, maybe Olivier, if you would be so kind to respond to possible questions. Are there some questions to Olivier before he leaves? Well, you have been crystal clear. So. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Merci, Olivier. Okay. So, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It is a pleasure to be here again at the community of users. Another one, yet again. So this is very good to see this momentum of the periodicity of these very fruitful and rich gatherings. I'm going to present the draft work program 2018-2020 for the Secure Societies Challenge. As I said, the draft program, so this means that at this point in time, I cannot enter into details because the program will only be adopted together with the work programs of other challenges under Horizon 2020, will be adopted on the 27th of October only. So I will give you the broad orientation. I will mention flagship topics. But I cannot go into the details. And this work program, as you will understand well, it's obvious, a very important one, because it is kind of the culmination of our security research strategy since the beginning of Horizon 2020, is the final stage. That's where we have had the opportunity, or we have the opportunity to adjust, to improve, also based on the midterm evaluation that took place and that was published in June, but also at the light of the recommendations that we have heard from you in this forum, but also in other fora. And this means that in all this reflection, your input, but also in the midterm evaluation, the issue was about improving, was about developing further, about exploring new avenues, also beyond 2020, but already in this work program 2018-2020, we have tried to already reflect some of these developments and improvements in the future one until 2020. The reflection beyond 2020 will further go on and will hopefully deliver something even better. So I will start by highlighting the first flagship topic. And the first flagship topic is what we call an open pre-commercial procurement. This is one of the particularities of the next work program. In PCP, public procurers look into several competing suppliers of research and development in parallel so that they can compare, of course, the different approaches and identify the most cost-effective ones on the market in order to meet their needs. And public procurers can obviously drive innovation from the demand side. The new open pre-commercial procurement should enable European public authorities to modernize public services faster, and in this particular area, get and be able to get the most modern, the most effective tools to address the needs, whether they are for preventing, combating terrorism, or in the area of resilience in all its different aspects. It should also create opportunities for companies in Europe to take international leadership in new markets. And this is a very important element too of the process. It is to get the right tools in the hands of public authorities that need to face the security challenges, but it's also to build and be able to give the conditions for our industry to compete the most effectively possible, successfully in international markets. In the 2017 call for proposals, we already had the pre-commercial procurement, and at the last meeting in May, there were several interventions around this, and this tool was identified as one of the important tools if we want to bring the market the research results to the market. And as Olivier Onidi highlighted, this is one of our most important priorities in our work, that we have this mandate of really improving this part of the current research and of the future research in this area. However, in 2017, the PCP was not open. And in the one we are proposing now, this means that the topics, open topics, will be one step further, will represent one step further, because it gives the stakeholders the possibility to come with their own ideas, but of course they need to meet the eligibility criteria. There will be two of these open topics. The first is a study-like approach to assess the feasibility of a PCP in a specific field. We do not determine the field. The second one is for proposals already mature for a fully fledged PCP project. Through this, we expect to stimulate the interest of public authorities across the EU and be able to foster the aggregation of demand. Our ambition is that public authorities and ministers of interior and other public authorities in the member states come together, develop innovative ideas together with the right stakeholders, and then be able also to jointly procure. And this openness, the openness of PCP, will also enable the flexibility to address the fast-moving threats. There is an evolution of security needs, which is very clear. We have kept a number of key components, of course, of the 2016-2017. Also, in the eligibility criteria, we have addressed a number of these in this forum here, the mandatory involvement of practitioners, etc. The eligibility criteria have been very successful in many respects. They have proved to be an effective tool to increase quality of proposals, but also to reduce the oversubscription. And this will be again underlined in the 2018-2020. I take the opportunity to mention that the 2017 call finished 2 weeks ago, and the oversubscription has been substantially reduced. The overall structure will remain with the security, infrastructure, and digital security. This will be preserved. The concept of overarching topics per year will remain, with both specific and open subtopics. This will continue in the call. The SME instrument will continue as well, but now with a fully fledged bottom-up approach. And now we have the return of the FTI. the fast track to innovation. There was a pilot project in 2015-2016. It was absent in 2017, and now we are launching this. In contrast to the SME instrument, the contribution for the FTI is not ring-fenced. This means that we fully depend on stakeholders to apply for funds if we want to make sure that the money we would like to be dedicated to security research is really used for security research. The first cutoff date is already the 21st of February. Don't ask me, I didn't have the time to ask my colleagues why it was the 21st of February, but this means that's tomorrow. If you want to start reflecting on it, it should be from tomorrow on. Now, the role in preparing the future security research beyond 2020. As I said, this is a transition 3 years. They should be able to show how much the Horizon 2020 has been successful in delivery, but also really solidly prepare the ground for having a major component, strong component of civil security research beyond 2020. And we should highlight that the context has substantially changed between a few years ago and what will be coming in. The emergence of the Islamic State, the ISIS, and the multiplication of the terrorist attacks and threats has led to not only an increase of the threat scenarios that need to be addressed, but the diversity as well. Also, we have seen an exponential increase in cyber attacks. Whatever the drivers, whatever the targets, whatever the techniques, some have organized crime reasons behind. We also have the use of the cyber world for terrorism purposes. So it is a multi-faced context, which actually is very attractive if we think research. So the room for research in this area has substantially increased and be exponentially challenging because of the diversity and the fast evolving changes in the threats. I think that we have proven that focused research enhances security. It does so by supporting the development of technologies and solutions that meet the needs of those on the front line, like you, those who have to address the challenges of terrorism, cybercrime, trafficking in weapons, in human trafficking, natural man-made disasters, whatever. But focused research helps the law enforcement practitioners, it helps the end users, the users more broadly. And as I said, security research is helping the European industry stand its ground against the strong competition, namely from the US, from Asia as well. More needs to be done in this area. And as Olivier Onidi said, we are working and trying to design and develop a number of different tools in addition to those in the work program, also some in the area of industrial policy or other types of events that enable to promote the better uptake by industry of research results. Again, only a few member states have their own national security research program. So most of the member states rely on Horizon 2020 for security research. The cross-border collaboration needs to be highlighted again. It prevents fragmented approaches, differing standards, duplication, all these, so it's vital to address these to be successful. The cross-border or the collaborative research, joint procurement of innovative capabilities, all these promote integrated approach, common standards, and ultimately interoperability, which is crucial if you have to address the same threats, the same disasters cross-border. The Commission's response to ensuring Horizon 2020 funding, that the 2020 funding delivers maximum impact when it comes to strengthening security, has been reinforced through the so-called focus area. I remember in May, I think I already mentioned the focus area. It is the focus area called Boosting the Effectiveness of the Security Union. What does it mean? It just means bringing together other challenges like energy, like health, that can come together so that we build synergies, we ensure consistency between the different work programs, and also in terms of visibility, we can say it is not only the secure society's challenge that supports the security union, we have a much bigger envelope where the security component of other challenges, as I mentioned, on energy, on health, can support as well the security union. In order that this is not just a facade thing, a presentation, a communication tool, we make sure that this is achieved through aligning the aspects of implementation of in terms of implementation of submission deadlines, evaluation procedures, that really this can be a type of a joint work. I would simply mention, so that you have a notion, a comparison possible, what are the other, there are only 4 focus areas for research under Horizon 2020. And these will give you a sense of the priorities as decided by the European Commission. So, in addition to the reinforcing the security union, we have a low-carbon, climate-resilient future. We have the circular economy, connecting economic and environmental gains, circular economy, and we have digitizing and transforming European industry and services. So, the security union is one of these 4. So I think it really gives a sense of where the focus is. We hope this will, remain for the period beyond 2020, that we will see. So again, it is a pleasure to be here today. I'll try to stay as long as possible during the morning, also to be listening to the discussions. I would like to wish you very fruitful discussions. I always have extremely positive feedback from Philippe and from the rest of the team. So I'm available for questions. Part of the team is also in the room. So depending on the questions, they are also there to reply to you now and throughout today and the next 2 days. So thank you again for your attention.
Thank you, Annabella. Well, as Annabella said, there are many different people from the team here in this room. You will be able during the day to catch some of my colleagues if you have some very specific questions. So now, if you have a burning question, quite of general nature, the floor is open to you. Otherwise, Annabella and colleagues will be there. Are there some, I would say, details that you would like from now to be discussed publicly, or whisper to Annabella later at the coffee break? It's okay? Okay. Well, Annabella will be there for the coffee break, so take advantage. My colleague will be there as well. There is Nada, Christophe, I think, Katarina as well. Katarina. So we are plenty, I think, of people here to respond to your question. Now, it's my pleasure to invite Ian Clark, who is head of unit at the Joint Research Center in ISPRA, of the Disaster Risk Management Knowledge Center, and he will make a state of the scientific report that they prepared. Ian, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Philippe and Annabelle. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for inviting me to speak at this event. I have spoken previously in a different life when I was working in DG ECHO, but now I'm in charge of a team at the Joint Research Centre that aims to provide scientific advice and also knowledge for different EU policies, particularly relating to disaster risk and also climate adaptation. And I'd like this morning to present very briefly to you a report we recently issued on Science for Disaster Risk Management. I think you have a summary in front of you. And this was something which we produced in May this year in time for the Cancun Global Platform for Disaster Risk Reduction. Do I put the slides on, or is it? Okay, thank you. So just very briefly, this has been undertaken in the context of the Disaster Risk Management Knowledge Centre, which sets out a framework for all our work, brings together a lot of different Commission services, as you can see on the slide, and aims to provide a number of services in the area of knowledge in relation to disaster risk management, either bringing together a whole variety of networks. There are many which the JRC supports relating to floods, to forest fires, to droughts, which often work very much in silos, don't actually necessarily bring together different elements, but we see in many of the disasters that already, this summer, for example, there are many links between different hazards. We also try to bring knowledge together, and that's this report. And there are certain aspects in relation to innovation, bringing together crisis management centers, how in which they can cooperate to innovate in the way in which they address the response to disasters, and it's very much serving member states. This report, as I said, is trying to bring together different knowledge sources in relation to disasters, so it's trying to manage the knowledge. We think is trying to fill a gap. We notice in the area of climate, there's been a long tradition of very authoritative scientific reports, and perhaps in the area of disasters, this has been missing. And this is an attempt perhaps to put something on the table to say, well, this is the state of play. What do you think of this? There are many gaps. We're interested very much in people's views on the kind of conclusions that we've come to, and also the state of knowledge, really. Just very briefly now, just the overall focus. It is, as I said, reviewing scientific solutions, so it's not producing new knowledge, it's trying to summarize existing knowledge. It is been based due to time pressure, bringing people together on European contributions largely, but it looks at a global scale. We think it's comprehensive, but there are a number of topics which have been selected are limited, and I'll come back to this in a moment. And we come to a slogan, knowing better, losing less, which in many ways is a kind of shorthand for better knowledge, which helps us to lose less in terms of loss of life, loss of economic, social assets. So it's not so much just as knowing more. We don't only need more knowledge, we need actually better knowledge. I think that's the main message that we want to pass. And in this context, we've looked at the whole issue of trying to understand disaster risk in the area of vulnerability, exposure, hazard, risk assessment, touching on communicating disaster risk. And I think this is a key gap in terms of communicating knowledge about different hazards, using local knowledge. And I know this is a priority for the current EU presidency, looking at better risk awareness. And then future challenges, how do we actually manage these disasters? How do we actually respond better, how preparedness and particularly recovery? Just here briefly, the the scope, the summary of the kind of chapters that there are in the report. It covers all natural hazards, also chemical hazards, nuclear, natural hazards causing technological disasters. It doesn't, however, cover perhaps cyber, which I know is a key interest of this group, nor health risks, pandemics, which are a key risk identified by member states in their national risk assessments. It was just by means of the resources available had to be limited to a certain number of risks. But I mean, this is perhaps something which we can look at for the future, how we could cover more types of hazards. Just here very briefly, those involved. This was also an important challenge in terms of governance, in fact, managing the team involved in preparing the report. So 160 authors, 123 reviewers, and 172 organizations altogether. So this was a major challenge, getting the papers on time. This is often a problem in the area of science. Also then peer reviewing the results. And as you can see, there are also 26 countries involved, 11 Directorate Generals from the EU Commission. Just here this is a quote that the editor-in-chief, my colleague Carmen, wanted to share with you, that we have tried to put together the best available knowledge, and now it's up to you perhaps to comment on this, to actually improve this with your experiences. And I think perhaps some key messages that we see coming out of the report is certainly that the science is very complex, and we need much better knowledge management to synthesize this for the audience, because it's clear that resilience needs to start at the local level, but if the science cannot be understood by those working at the local level, then it's not really serving its purpose. And so it's clear that also the evidence from practitioners needs to feed back into the science. A second issue is that there really is a data revolution, and are we managing to really to actually understand the data and also use it in a coherent way? For example, from space, it's currently estimated that some 10 terabytes of data is free and open data, in fact, is coming from space every day. But how can we actually manage to use this? There's the whole question of open data, big data, social data. So this, I think, is a key challenge across the whole area of disasters and crisis management. And then we need more innovation, particularly in the area of Earth observation. We need to bring together in situ, airborne, and satellite sensors, in fact, to improve the completeness and timelessness and better instrumentation for knowledge. We are already thinking of the next report, which will probably come out in 3 or 4 years' time. We're thinking we should perhaps move more from looking at, this one looked at hazards, the whole question of impact-based early warning systems is a key demand. I noticed the lessons being learned perhaps from some of the most recent disasters was the information sufficiently accurate but also understandable by the public to help us be prepared? I noticed a particular criticism in relation to the recent hurricanes in this area. So we are looking for authors because, of course, drafting needs to start early, probably by the end of this year. And the aim is to have this out then by 2020. Sorry, I went backwards instead of forwards. Just to conclude, the report is now available online. You have a summary in front of you. The full report is well over 400 pages. We are, of course, interested in feedback. And here is an appeal for those to join us, to become a contributor, and also to share your events and news in relation to the Knowledge Centre. So I'll stop there. Thank you very much for giving us this opportunity.
Thank you very much, Ayan. Since Ayan has to leave, if there is a question on this presentation, well, please be welcome. Yes.
Horst Kramer, Skodeda, Germany. Just a question of this is a state of the art, that report. The question is, how much is the deficits? How much is the goal reaching of research with comparison, for instance, to the details written in the Sendai framework? There's a lot of things to be done if you do the Sendai framework in the right way. So this strategy of being complete or being better complete in that way will be something where the research would have to match the task of the administration units involved. There's a lot of administration units involved. How does the European Union or the Science Center direct or is involved with that? It's just putting that in the air, or are there really deficits named?
Thank you very much. No, I think we did try to identify some deficits. I think the whole question of risk assessment is a key area where there's deficits. I know this is a controversial issue, but whether we could move towards more common approaches in the area of risk assessment, that is a key deficit for comparison purposes, but also for learning from the way in which issues are undertaken. The whole question of interoperability between assets, common standards, and so on, that we think is a big deficit, and where we think more research is necessary. And a third area, again, for the researchers, is that transdisciplinary research, although it's developing, we still feel it's in its infancy. That's one also conclusion of the report, and much more is needed in bringing scientists together really to work together. We still don't really have the economists fully involved in the disaster risk area. That's one. So I mean, I think for us, we can't say it's complete. It's the state of art as far as we could gather based on the 2 years' work, but we certainly need an awful lot more, and bringing more scientists more together, networking, sharing experience, this is vital.
Thank you, Ayan. I would like to add that this support to the Sendai Framework for Action is obviously part of our research portfolio, and we would like, actually, it's a win-win situation as well. It has to be reciprocal. We open the floor for contact with, for example, UNISDR, but we would need to have practical feedback and practical cooperation with the different actors, in particular, for example, the disaster risk, the regional platforms and so on, but it's very difficult to have them on board. So we open research topics, clearly pinpointing that we wish to support the Sendai Framework for Action, but the projects, the research projects, in fact, lacks very often cooperation with UNSDR, very often for simple financial reasons, because they cannot participate, for example, in Horizon 2020, UNISDR. So there are a lot of things which need to be sorted out as well, administratively, to be able to practically contribute to the goals. I would like to thank you very much, Ayan. Thank you. I know that you have to leave, so. So we will continue now with a more focused presentation on urban aspects and the policy on urban agenda on climate adaptation. I welcome Stefania Manca. If you could go up. And there is, in fact, you will see links with research, because there is one of our flagship projects which is called Anywhere on Climate Extreme Events, which is also working with the municipality of Genoa. Stefania, the floor is yours.
Okay, so just to introduce myself, I'm Stefania Manca. I work in the municipality of Genoa, before in the European management of management of European project, and then since a few months ago, Genoa is the coordinator for the Climate Adaptation Partnership, the Urban Agenda for the EU. And so I'm a technical assistant in this case, and I'm not alone today because the Genoa team is present with a lot of people. And in fact, we have Corrado Ragucci that is belonging to the Civil Protection Department of the municipality that is on a round table just in front of me. And also CIMA Foundation, because CIMA for us is the link with the Anywhere project and also Imprex project, so project that he already knows. And I also kindly thank him because I thank Nicola Rebora because during this year we are member of the community of users from 2 years, but during this year he helped us and support us being present in your periodic meetings. So this time the municipality could come, and so we are here. And then we also have a representative office here in Brussels with Simona Costa, that is our major contact in these days. And so for every question after my presentation, we are here for all day long. And when my presentation will start, I start telling something more. But more just to summarize, why Genova decided to participate to the urban agenda? Because my city, like other urban contexts, is affected from threats, problems, and has a lot of challenge to face. So basically, starting from the local, no. No, the technology an enabling factor. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Well, never mind. Okay, I can speak. Yes. Okay. So I work a lot of days on my presentation, and then okay, so I'm an actress. So, well, but starting from the bottom, okay. We are a municipality, so a lot of problem, challenge, and something to fix with our normal activities. And when an extreme event happens to the municipality, all of people are involved to face and to solve the problem. And then what happens when something has to be faced in another way? We can first of all raise awareness of our context. We have to raise awareness of who we are, where we are, and which are our breakpoint and our wake point. And then we try, more or less, you know that a municipality has not a lot of resources, and with public works could do something. So with their own resource, they could do something. And then, thank you to European initiative and project, we can be supported by the researcher, by the practitioner, and by the public institution to solve the problem in another way. So we can act using the European funds to try to put in place demonstrator. We try to put in place another way of approach our territory. And the most important thing is to increase our knowledge and our local awareness, and we hope capability and capacities to face in the future the same challenge with the minor losses. So this is the main message. And we actually has a lot of initiative, thank you the European Commission, and also with our national structural funds. So we have a lot of initiative in our city. Because in the risk equation, we are trying to solve it, decreasing some of the value on hazard, on exposure, and on vulnerability. But clearly, all of the projects leave one on its own. every European project has a life, and what happened when the project finished. We have to capitalize it, and we have to go over and to go beyond. We have to use another kind of framework. We have to use another kind of vision of a city. And so we need a systemic approach and a systematic approach, just to put in evidence what we have done with the different initiatives and to go over a unique vision. And so the urban agenda for the EU give us the possibility and the opportunity to candidate ourselves. And in this case, this great instrument that is quite new give us not only the possibility to be partner with member states and the European Commission organization, but also to be a coordinator in this case. And the urban agenda on the EU, when my slide will go, yes, wow, I finish, okay. Yes, and then this, so, wow. This is something that everyone knows. And then, whoa. Okay. Okay, this was the slide. So, an overlapping. Okay, an overlay of different level from the local to the European. Okay, and in the middle, our initiative, so you can see the project that you already know, and other projects that help us, that support us, okay, in raising awareness and a major awareness regarding our situation. And then the instruments, that is the urban agenda. That is, I use the infographic of the urban agenda because I'm not a member of the European Commission, so I can give you an impression and our perception of this instrument that for us is something that is starting right now. And the main document of the urban agenda is the Pact of Amsterdam that we use as a series of rules and on which we prepare our documents, that is for a scene, and then I will explain you. But mostly the three main pillars in this case are the key principle on the right, the priority theme on the middle of the infographic, and then the main objective on the left. The key principles are summarized here, but the most important in this slide is, first of all, the multi-level governance that is guaranteed in the urban agenda. So member states, cities, and European organizations all together, working together in an integrated approach. And the connection with the partner, with the partnership, is guaranteed by the Pact of Amsterdam rules, but also by the priority theme that all the urban context has to face and try to solve, we hope. And then the cities of all sides, because I will show you in our partnership that are cities that are more or less quite small and bigger cities. We are a medium size because we are not so big. But the most important thing and the message that the European Commission give us, give us is that all of us are equal, and so we are all together in a round table trying to solve together. And so the voice of a city that is quite a small reality compared with member states and European Commission, well, a city could speak, and also loudly sometimes, to tell you, well, I have a problem, but this is my problem, not the main regulation, but this is my problem. So help me to solve, and I give you my advice and my needs. And in this case, the priority team have been declining into 12 partnerships, and and they started since the beginning of 2016. Every 6 months start for partnership, and so this is sort of timetable, and we are in the last part. We are newborn in this case because we have the kickoff in July, so it is really we are starting. But the most important thing for us was to be today here, just to start with the right fit, and so establishing a good networking and also a link with the community of users in this case. These are the main objectives of the urban agenda. first of all, the better regulation. All the partnership will produce an action plan where they could address action, concrete action. They ask us concrete action to address better regulation. Probably it could be a proposal of deregulation sometimes, and we have to decide. Starting now, we do not know. But we already saw some action plan of the partnership that started 1 year ago. That more or less the perception is to go versus a deregulation, so to help cities to better assess action, not losing themselves in the bureaucratic threats that are also, for a city, is a problem in this case. Funding, how to assess the action if I cannot have access to the funding in the right way. A lot of funds remain in the European Commission or remain in the, for instance, in the EIB, and they cannot assess and they cannot give funding because they do not have a right indicator to assess the action on to choose which is the best project on which we can invest. And so this is also an idea also to contribute to the future call and for the future programming period also. And the knowledge in this case is focused on data, open data, and information, also shared knowledge, clearly, best practice, and so on. But more or less focusing on data, because we need data, and also the platform of the European Commission need data in order to make different kind of analysis and to clustering also the data in a different way. These are the steps. Just to be a coordinator to candidate to the urban agenda, you have to write a scoping paper. We wrote one, and then when the European Commission decide that okay, you can start. You start with the kickoff meeting. So it is the first time that the partner work together. So it's not like an European project because you met before, you try, so we wrote the dough all together, there is a coordinator, and then we start. No, in this case it's quite different because we met, for instance, in July, and it was the first time that member states, in this case cities and European Commission organization, met all together. And what we have to do, we have to finalize in 2-3 months an orientation paper. That is our main documents, is our main deliverable, we can say in this way, that will guide our work till the approval of the second main document, second deliverable, that is the action plan, in which we design concrete action, including also the stakeholder engagement, which stakeholder who can support us, which are the main network that could help, and that could contribute also to design concrete action too. So a very proactive and participative approach. In this case, the action plan approval take more or less 6 months, and then we have 1.5 years to implement concrete action. And then we will be evaluated by the European Commission. And so, finally, Climate Adaptation Partnership, this is the partnership. And as you can see, 7 urban authorities. And these are the European Commission organizations that are present and that participate during our CoU. And the other European organization and network and programming that are helping us in this case, Eurocities, SEMRE, or BACT. We hope to have more. And the member states that are participating in the Climate Adaptation Partnership. As you can see, we also are in contact with clearly our ministry, so just to involve them. And this is one exercise and step that we made during the CoU, which are the main impact that, or better explained, the most frequently, okay, impact that address our partnership. And this is the result. And my opinion is quite impressive because there are a lot. We are different because if you think at Trondheim, for instance, that is in the north, has more or less something different, but not so much respect to the other. And we can see all together. So I prefer to show a slide with every clear and white, but we cannot. Everything is red, and sun is impressive too. And the main objective of the climate adaptation partnership, you can read it, but in this case, it's something that match with what Mr. Clark says before: vulnerability assessment, climate resilience, and risk management. So the main pillar and the main objective are this one. So we have to address these main topics. And starting, we have to study. So these are the main references that has been used to, now we are in an early stage. So we are trying to finalize the orientation paper that will be also put online for a public consultancy. So people could also contribute in this paper. And then this is another progressive path. So starting always from the bottom, with the main problem, risk, impacts, needs. Maybe needs for a citizen, for a city, for people is something that could be expressed. But to address this risk, we have to increase our capacity, and we need all of the elements in the middle of the diagram. And in the partnership, some cities has already some experienced staff, has already some expertise and tools to share. Some other cities, no, absolutely not. And so, what is the evidence in this case? Because we have to not only to mind the gap, but we have to fill the gap, and especially the capacity of the urban context in Europe. And when we have to study, we have to learn, and so the references on one hand and the climate indicator on has been our basis for the orientation paper first drafting. Okay, in order to have in evidence and to support better the elements that has to be in a progressive enabling path. Sorry. Could be what we want finally. We want to better assess our vulnerability analysis, our decision-making criteria, and our, well, monetizing climate adaptation is something new because it was the EIB to propose this. So everything that I put is made by the partnership. This is only a map regarding the differences in impacts and capacity. And this is what we, at the moment, we have done during the CoU. We divide ourselves clearly in working group, and these are the main topic on which we will deal. And the cross-cutting issue that has been chosen by the partnership as the most important to find bottleneck and potential to be addressed by the action plan that will come in forward. And then, well, our main objective, I leave you the presentation, and why we are here, just to disseminate and to be and to collaborate with you all. And so, thank you.
Thank you very much, Stefania. What I find fascinating in this presentation is that you see that the community of users is actually working at this level now, but there are many different types of community of users, of which the most practical dimension is certainly the regional and the city now dimension, as you see, because we can think globally, but the actions will be taken very locally. So this is very interesting, and we have discussed, in fact, in June, which initiatives were existing at national level, just to see whether this kind of approach is already undertaken by some member states, which is the case. Some member states have this kind of plurisectorial, multi-actor kind of platform of exchange. But we have also discovered that it happens at regional level, sometimes in cooperation between different regions through interreg region. Now we see with Stefania that it can also involve cities, and there are cities network. So this, you see the complexity. So our work altogether will be in the coming years to try to put some orders in this, I would say, complicated tree. We need to see how the mechanism can work from the international to the very local, which is a city. And we can make it, in fact. It's really up to us to put the right pieces of the puzzle together. And we are progressing. We did not have this kind of exchange 2 years ago. So now this is very, very interesting to see this. Do you have any burning questions to Stefania? Well, she will be here all day. So if you need details on the initiative, you will be able to ask directly. But if you have something which is of interest to everybody, please. Yes, Georgios.
Hello, Yorgos Kolerakis, University of Frankfurt. It has been, in order to reinforce your evaluation of the input by Stefania, we heard a different story than, or a complementary story than the technology story we heard this morning by the Deputy Director. And I want to highlight this issue that it is not developing new or better technologies. It is developing technologies in context, in the context of application, in the organizational context of application, in the institutional context of application. I mean, the word technology didn't appear once in the presentation we have heard, which means that practitioners and policymakers and decision makers on the ground have different priorities. Technologies can help only if a number of other enabling conditions are there at place. This is why this sort of community building, transfer, knowledge transfer and experience transfer is perhaps key. This is what enables or what constrains even technology intake or uptake.
Well, thank you very much for this comment. Well, for us, it's very clear. You will see in the work program 2018-20 that we have listened to your advice and the advice that have been collected in the last community of users, indeed to consider this dimension. You will see that we have fully considered this. Very quick question, please. There is, yeah, please.
Epafos Advisors. I represent here space and defense communities from Europe and Mediterranean. I was inspired from George's question, plus what you are writing here. It is a moral duty and good policy, as well as a potential legal responsibility to properly identify the risks that society faces. So I raise awareness to our security communities all around Europe and Mediterranean, because on the other side of the Atlantic, and I hope that the gentleman here who represents the American engineers, he will transfer our message. 10 years here, I'm investigating and I'm researching, apart from other things, the deep science we have, which is 30, 40 years in front from the level of the normal citizen. But I have discovered that there are scientific issues which are interfering in the human knowledge, like artificial intelligence, which are more progressive. And here in Europe, we don't have awareness as a community, as an organized society of safety and security. On the other side of the Atlantic, and maybe in the Russians and the Chinese, they are more organized. So what are we doing for this? Because only in democracy we can have the new, let's say, how we can adapt these new technologies, which with artificial intelligence, they have a lot of other possibilities. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your interesting comments. Well, I will invite you again to look at the work program 2018-20 when it will be adopted, and particularly to the DRS1 topic, because it is exactly responding to your concern. So please look at this, because we have taken this very seriously in our work program preparation, and we are duly taking this into account. You had a very burning questions, very quick, because we are late in the agenda.
No, it was just a point relating to these two interventions. I'm Mr. Rautjärvi. I think this is an 8th time I have been always here. So I think it's a question about getting this knowledge into the institution, and also the question about this matter of intelligence, and it's ultimately, I think it depends on the human engagement, on the personal engagement. At least in Finland, I have recognized that you are only getting it through if you have a personal relationship and you're investing your own person into the subject matter, and then you open up if you are lucky, you open up the new developments. We need a personal responsibility.
Thank you very much. Well, I know that you are a very strong supporter, and as I am, about the human dimension. It's why we are here today. It is really something to be very, very deeply considered. Well, I would like to move with the agenda because we are already a little bit late, and we spoke about technologies. Well, we will in fact move a little bit on a topic on technologies, mostly on CBRN, and we would like to invite Clive Goodchild, who will give you some insight into a cluster which is ongoing, and while explaining a little bit what type of new move we are doing in this area. Clive, you are already here, very efficient. Thank you.
Yes,
the floor is yours.
Good morning, everybody. Let's put this up here. The Encircle Cluster is a 4-year project coordinated by UCL, and the main objective is to improve competitiveness and procurement of CBRN technologies by helping EU industry to develop successful strategies and innovations and consolidate EU CBRN communities of suppliers and practitioners. The project started April this year, and I'd like to give you an update of the first few months of activity and where we've got to. So, our basic 5 objectives that we are measuring ourselves. A, we are open and neutral. I think as all the Part B people that kept asking us questions, which we didn't answer, we are as neutral as you can possibly be. We're here to provide a sustainable and flexible vision and roadmap for the development of CBRN market and innovations. We're here to provide integration with platforms. Now, platforms mean systems, tools, services, products, by proposing standardized interfaces where we can, and where is required, future EU standards to help us integrate the CBRN technologies developed from the SEC 05 Part B projects. We're also here to support CBRN safety, security and defence commercial and market services, and improve and facilitate European CBRN technology dissemination and exploitation. So why should you be interested? Well, the benefits the cluster provides, if we consider, first of all, the practitioners and the customers, by being involved in Encircle, you get involved in state-of-the-art assessments on needs and gaps, participating in the workshops, and you will get involved in some product demonstrations where we can arrange it. We're also interested in your involvement in workshops to improve policy, procurement, and market development, service and support, in particular of new innovations, which we see as a particular problem of getting new innovations out of research projects actually into the market. We're also interested in you providing us feedback on the catalogue contexts so they can be improved as we go through the project. That's your needs, your gaps, what product information you need, providing you lessons learned from the research projects, and giving you the ability to raise questions on your particular needs and issues that you'd like answered. From the industrial and technological community, you've got the possibility to register, promote your new innovations, products and services, networking with suppliers and with practitioners, and also linking with the other Encircle partners to help facilitate business maturity assessment. So are we actually meeting any of those objectives? Well, the first thing we've done is, and it was completed last week, we held our first Encircle workshop in Warsaw. This was focused around the practitioners. And effectively, we gave an overview of the project, the new catalogue, which I'll describe in a minute. But we also started a CBRN EU activities review. So this included presentations from the SEC 21 practitioner networks on their projects, so we can start working out how we're going to link with them. And also a number of the national projects and border security projects where there are CBRN links, so we can start getting extra information on needs and gaps. We also did an updated workshop on what needs and gaps do the practitioners now need to be fulfilled. The original survey was done under the Eden project, so the information's about 3 years old and we need to refresh it. And we held workshops in the areas of protection, cyber security, detection and identification, decontamination, situation awareness, and we'll be holding further reviews in other areas as we go through. We also started touching the thorny issue of policy and procurement. So, the catalogue. The catalogue is now live and up and running and is accessible via the Encircle project site. It's in its phase 1 implementation at the moment, so we're testing the initial tools and products and innovations that have initially been loaded. So at the moment, we have a products catalogue or an innovation catalogue, and we also have the facility for a project database. So this allows related projects to actually put information on a summary of their project, where their project's going, so we can start moving knowledge around in those areas. We're starting to include information on interfaces, so we can actually start connecting all these systems together and refreshing, and you'll find all the unclassified needs and gaps lists within the actual portal. What will be coming in the next iterations will be a question box for the practitioners. Now that allows them to raise urgent new requests, urgent needs and solutions they're looking for. We'll also be including the marketplace function, so that will include requests for information for new capabilities. There'll be an innovation watch looking at not just CBRN projects, but other projects that might be useful for taking on in the future. There'll be a roadmap summary, which will be non-technological lessons from EU projects, so we get lessons learned from there. And also areas on sources of funding and procurement agencies and updated information on EU and national instruments. One thing we're particularly interested in is any instruments that will help SMEs to get their products into the market. There'll also be general reporting on the cluster business discussions with the Part B projects. To register is very easy. You have to be a member of one of the communities, and you do that via the project website. You click register, fill in your organisation. For the technological and industrial community, you have to fill in one project or one tool. That's one of the criteria for getting in. Download the letter of intent, sign it, so that respects all the confidentiality issues. Submit your request, and then you'll get a username and password. Wi-Fi permitting, the system is live on my laptop today, so if people are interested, I can basically show you what the system is. All depends on the BAO Wi-Fi and whether it survives the day. The other area we've been looking at is how we're actually going to support the Part B projects. So, topic list came out in 2017. The agreements have been signed with the, I think it's 13 projects that were submitted. And we're now looking at how we're actually going to support the cluster in terms of how their innovation develops during their project. And the way we're going to look at doing this, and we'll finalise this at the end of the year, is we basically, anyone who knows me from Eden, I like radar charts. They're pretty and you can see what's going on. So effectively, the radar chart you see there is broken into 3 segments. There's the technological segment, the opportunity segment, and the resources segment. And we basically have a set of questions that we can ask the Part B projects. So simplistically, do you understand the concept of operations of how your product is going to be used? Do you understand the regulation side? Do you understand any standards that you need to do? And we can start seeing how mature they are in their thinking, and then we can actually target the areas that we can help those projects as they go along. They may understand their route to market, they may understand the concepts, but they might have difficulties in other areas, and that's where we'll help them. So we'll basically track them as we go along with that. And one of the particular areas that will be around regulations and the route to market. And this sort of leads us naturally on to the last part of the workshop we did last week, which is all about policy and procurement. So, everything about security is complicated. Everything about security seems to be fragmented. So if you take the demand side of the supply cycle, it's completely destructured. So in some places, government actors play a big role. In other areas, private industry plays a big role in product acquisition. And there's overlap, and you can guarantee within every single country there's national adaptation. And even within a country, you'll find regional adaptations of the same technologies. On the supply side, you have large industry of which security or CBRN may be part of their portfolio. You have specialized industry, large industries that concentrate on CBRN, but you have a huge number of small, medium enterprise that specialize in certain areas. So the supply side is equally fragmented. So we looked at a generic case study, and I can't say the country and I can't say the services that were looked at, who started looking at the procurement cycle. So they looked at all their services, and they basically found that each of the services that were buying very similar equipment were paying a huge variation in prices for the product they were getting, because it's all fragmented and no one talks to each other. And also that a lack of standardization was driving procurement and driving the costs. Geography doesn't help, as I've already said. It's hard enough getting national centralized procurement, if that's a good idea, let alone European centralized procurement. And a factor that came out from the operations branch, although they don't talk about it openly, is they felt there was a lack of influence in what is needed at the operations front, as opposed to what their management and procurement authorities were actually going to do, and there was a disconnect in that area. So one thing that's been muted is collaborative procurement. Is that a way forward? Well, yes and no. Just increasing the volume does not necessarily help the supply and demand and the costs. And that's for a few simple reasons. For a start, one size does not fit all. What is required, say, in Trondheim is not necessarily going to be the same as what's going to be required in a hot climate down in southern Mediterranean. There will always be some adaptations. And if you want to start coordinating procurement to try and get some benefits on both sides, then you're going to need resource, you're going to need IT, you're going to need budget. Where does the budget come from? Do you take it away from operations to improve something else? So that starts getting very political. A major criteria, and while it does help in some cases, is you always have to balance the operational needs from the practitioner with what is seen to be good procurement practices. And from a supplier side, there needs to be more commitment, but also what would help the supplier side is reducing the number of different types of testing and evaluation we have to do for products. There's no point someone doing a product and getting a CE mark and then going off to an EU country and then having to do that national adaptation of testing because they need something different. Then you sell the product to a different country and, oh, by the way, we want it slightly tested differently. That drives costs on both the supply side and the demand side. Policy. Right. So for CBRN, the key area is the CBRN action plan. We have the explosive action plan and regulations. But if you look through all the DGs and all the areas, everyone seems to have CBRN written in somewhere, whether it be energy, transport, external, whatever. And somehow all this has got to be coordinated. I'm still not quite sure who the overall conductor is to coordinate all these people to make sure they're all in sync. But all this also has to match somehow with the EU industrial policy. The industrial policy is there to increase competitiveness and innovation. So you've got 16 bodies from one side doing one thing, you have an industrial policy doing something on the other side, and somehow someone's got to bring these together. And from our point of view, the particular challenge is from what comes out of the research projects. So if you're an established person in the market in CBRN, you're already maybe selling chemical detectors or whatever, then your problems aren't so large. If you're a small, medium enterprise, or you're a research project that's come up with a brand new innovation, how do we get that innovation into the market? And who are going to be the early adopters that will pick up that innovation so we can bring it forward? And that's going to be one of the challenges, or one of the particular challenges that we will have as the cluster, and it's one of the areas that we will seek help from the policy part, and where they can help us where they can. And that will also, the other area, of course, is the fragmentation side and the market side. We saw a presentation last week on the ERN CIP. There may be some measures on that side, and we'd like to establish some links on that side from Encircle so we can pick up some practice on that side. So to finish off, How are we going to go forward? Well, in the short term, we want to look at policy procurement. It's not something we want to leave to the end of the project. That's always too long. We want to start addressing this right up front so we can put measures in place. We've also got the next round of needs and gaps prioritisation and the catalogue enhancements. And of course, come March, April, we will have the initial links with whoever's won the Part B projects. Next year's workshop will be more focused on technological and industrial, and the hope is we can link it with another of the projects so we can actually bolt two projects together and have one activity going. In the longer term, you need to look at areas such as where is appropriate, and I always like to use the word appropriate for standardization. People like to do standards, but unless you can show there is a benefit for the standard, it is a complete waste of time. Much like policy, perhaps, but yes, that's another matter. There always has to be a benefit. And we'll start looking at what is good on collaborative procurement. We know certain countries have tried to do it. We also know the lessons learned from that, so that it may be in particular areas it makes sense to have European collaborative procurement. I would have thought in the areas like comms and things like that, that makes sense. In the case of PPE, the environment and operating factors are so different across Europe, it might not make so much sense, or you might need extra criteria around it. So as part of that, we're going to start conducting some rolling surveys. The first one is going to be on policy and procurement. That will shortly be available on the Encircle project site. If you prefer not to go online and you prefer an Excel questionnaire, then let us know and we can just send you that and you can fill that in. All information will be treated confidentially. No person or specific organisation will be attributed to any response, so please be as open as possible. I have found whenever I've tried to raise policy and procurement, especially in the practitioner community, they are obviously quite reticent on what they're prepared to say. So we want generic information. If there are good practices and lessons learned that we can transfer to other countries or other places, then please let us know. Thank you for your attention, and I encourage you to register the cluster and participate. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Clive. Well, you see that it's an attempt to have a kind of new approach with respect to push to the market of Siberian technologies. And as Clive mentioned, we have opened in 2017 this year a call for research and innovative actions that will be evaluated very soon. So we will test a little bit this coordination among the cluster which Clive mentioned, described, and this new selected research and innovative actions. And we'll see whether if it's brings a new way of working together, we'll push that in the future. Maybe not in 2018, but later we'll continue with this type of instruments. And who knows? Well, if it's it can inspire other fields. I would like to stress that. I will come to you, Maite. Just a very quick question because we are very late in time. Clive will be there all day, I suppose. And then he mentioned also projects like eNotice, which is also a network of training center related to Siberian. You have Kathleen, I see, Olga, probably Jean-Luc is somewhere. Yes, there. So you have people, if you want to network and ask specific questions, please take the advantage of their presence today.
Okay, thank you very much, Philippe and Clive, for the effort. Clarifying a little bit this mechanism for this collaboration between the Encircle CSA project with the other small technology projects that are going to be approved in the next evaluation. It's just a question that I wanted to raise because there is some people here that is interesting that has applied, and so as a member state we have been asked a lot on this topic specifically because the mechanism is a bit new, and for what I have understood, Encircle is going to be a sort of technological orientation body regarding these small projects, or what sort of orientation are you going to give them, for instance, or what sort of collaboration can they expect regarding encircle partners and the small projects. Just an example.
I bring you the microphone. Wow, you look like a Stiberen guru, huh?
Okay, some of the things we'll do is, one of the key things is be able to link where it's appropriate, link the new innovations to the platforms. We'll facilitate that. We will look for new funding instruments to help take their products view to the market is another instance, and we'll guide them on how they actually develop their business plans. What we don't want is a project to go to a certain point and it goes into, I'll call it the EU project black hole, and it comes to an end. We want to be able to facilitate so that project carries on and matures and eventually gets into the market. So yes, connecting to the other suppliers. As far as the cluster is concerned, the partners, there are certain partners that already have systems that may or may not connect to the Part B projects. We won't know that until we know who's won, but we'll also facilitate to other people in the communities so they can connect to that.
Thank you very much, Clive. Yeah, we have been challenged by the fact that the projects are reaching a certain technological readiness level were not sufficiently supported in their, I would say, a race to the market. This is an attempt to really make a difference. We'll see whether it works, but it's really an attempt. So we will see in 2 years whether we are on a good track, and if not, we will improve, and if yes, we'll say hallelujah and we'll continue. So I would like to now to open the floor for the last event of the morning, which is a roundtable, and we'll have some different actors covering policy, networking, research, crisis management, science, and standardization. And the topic is on cyber and resilience in the European Union, coordination and supporting needs. And the master of ceremony will be Carlos Rojas Palma, who will act as a moderator for the discussions. Yeah, you can come up, and then we'll have a representation from the policy side by Victor Voitas from DG Home. We'll highlight the links between policy and research in the context of the revision of the EU action plan to strengthen cyber and security. Then we'll have the international dimension with DG DevCo, Tristan Simonard, who will provide an update on the Cyber and Center of Excellence network development, and also, highlight supporting research needs. Shahzad Ali from European Defence Agency will refer certainly to EDA funded project. You can go up and please have a seat. I hope that there are six chairs. And some insight into coordination. Well, we'll speak about possible links between EDA project and Horizon 2020. Hans Denef, who is from the Federal Crisis Center from Belgium, will share experience about an oncoming cyber and center of expertise. So you will discuss about the needs to link EU to regional levels as well. And last but not least, Patricia Compa from the French Ministry of Interior, who is the chair of CENTICI 391, who will highlight issues related to standardization. Now, I leave the floor to Carlos. Please, charm us with your moderating. Thank you.
How's the time, Philippe?
It's 11:36, so we are supposed to stop at 12:30. Well, you can have 5 to 10 minutes delay, but we can stop at 12:30. So okay. You have 1 hour.
Okay, thank you much. Good late morning. Pleasure to be here. Happy to help Philippe with the organization of this panel. I'm with the Belgian Nuclear Research Center. We have a framework contract with DG Home, and one of the activities I'm dealing with is observing whether national community of users can help the Commission disseminate policies and also other activities that are part of this house, but they need to be transferred to the national environment. So in this respect, I'm helping Philippe with the organization and trying to transfer ideas and how to cross-fertilize from this community that is really working and it's proven to be a success to go to the national environment. And then we have a very distinguished panel. I don't think I fit in there, but I've been told that you burn more calories by standing up, so I will try to do that. I have a burning issue, and I will just throw this on the table. After March 22nd, I was asked that we have, in March 22nd, we had a life-changing event in Brussels when we were actually victims of an attack. And after the attack, I was asked to give a presentation on what if this not TATP, but what if this attack would be a CBRN? And in my domain, RN would be a cause of concern. So I was invited to give a presentation, and the stakeholders I had at that time were the Brussels subway, a local transport operator, the postal service, because they were also concerned about packages and what if there is a CBRN agent in a package. So we tried to make an assessment of what if, and one of the possible scenarios was an attack on the subway and an RN. And they said, well, how can we be prepared for that? How can we try to give, I mean, we're dealing with resilient societies and we're trying to improve the security of the citizens. So from my perspective, it was very easy. We said, if you're concerned about RN attacks in the subway system, you install portal detection devices at every single entrance of the subway system. And they said, oh, would that work? I said, definitely, it would work. Practical issue number one is who's going to pay for that? Practical issue number two is the regulator point of view. If we connect every single portal in the subway system and we have a cancer patient, it will trigger the alarm. So we have a practical issue as well. And we would have false positives, and we would create some. So even though I can have on the market the right technology, the implementation of the technology is not straightforward because we have additional elements that we need to address with that. So this is just to think about it, and I'm really engaging and I'm willing to engage in any activity that you can think of that we can address those issues, because those are the practical things. The technology exists. I can even bring from a European project new and innovative technology, but there is always somebody who has to pick up the bill, and we have a problem with that in the implementation. So when I proposed the solution of installing in every single substation a portal detection system, they went back and they said, well, we have consulted with the International Association of Subway Operators, and we don't think this is a priority at the time. Full stop. Having said that, I want to start with our panel, and the idea is to deal with CBRN resilience and CBRN resilience and other. So who would like to? Ladies first? Yes, Patricia, the floor is yours.
I have stolen the microphone.
Well, thank you, Carlos. I wasn't expected to speak first, but it's okay. I'm chair of CEN-TC 391, which is societal and citizen security. But I want to speak here also as expert in crisis management and resilience. I belong to the French Ministry of Interior. I should speak to you about standards and how standards can precisely make things become real. Standards are a tool, one of the tools that you can use to enhance resilience within Europe. And regarding the CBRNE issue, which is very difficult to address, technically very difficult, it is absolutely essential that we work on processes to implement in a concrete way, resilience within Europe. You see, we have risks, tremendous risks regarding CBRNE. We know a lot about these risks. We know how to address them. But the problem is we have a continent here. We have the European Union with 28 states, 28 governments, 28 policies. But all these risks I was talking about don't know anything about borders. Disasters don't know anything about borders. So how do we cope with the situation? It is our responsibility to do what we can in order to be able to face this situation. I don't think the public would accept that we didn't anticipate. Looking at CBRNE risks, you probably know, all of you know that minutes mean lives, saving lives. And we have to make sure that when anything happens, any kind of incident, we can do the right thing. How could standards improve the situation? Well, standards are, as I said, tools, and they're not always what you think they are. Lots of different kind of standards. They are things that help you build resilience. We already have some standards on very technical issues regarding CBRNE, but we lack standards on processes, on how can we have our policies, our actions, or research improved. So we don't have standards. We are currently issuing a standard within my technical committee on glossary, NRBC glossary, which is a start. But and we also have a technical specification that will be published by the end of this year on crisis management. It's nothing specific regarding CBRNE, but it's probably be one of the tools. But we don't have we need to make sure that we have one standard on this particular type of risk about detection, for instance. We need to be able to make sure that we assess situation the same way, that we talk about the same thing, that we are sure that we understand each other. We need standards or systems or processes that should be implemented by standards on alert. This is essential. We don't have them. How do we how can we be sure that we reach the right population in the right area in a very short period of time with the right message? If it's in an area, and there are many of them in Europe, where there are different governments, how do you do this? Sometimes when you look at regulations and policies, the authorities are supposed to do different things. So how do we do this? We should be able to have standards on training. We are training, actually. We're doing lots of things, but we don't have standards on training, whether it's an RBC issue or not. On exercising, on lesson learned. Can you think on what added value we should have on a lesson learned kind of framework, knowing that Europe is probably one of the places where you have the better knowledge in the world on these risks and how to address them, and excellent research. So why shouldn't we try to take advantage of this by maximizing everybody's knowledge and expertise, and enhance everybody's knowledge, and find what's the better knowledge that could work for everyone. this would be essential for in order to address cyber threats or any kinds of threats. We have standard on crisis management. It's not a standard; it's a technical specification, but we would need many other standards. The EU, thanks to DG Home, is pushing to make all the outcomes of the project, EU projects, funded projects, become real. And standards is one of the way. And the DG Home is pushing for standardization for all the reasons that I exposed. So we are also adapting our structures and our work within Senelec, because the perception of the threats, not the threats, but the perception of the threats is now growing, and that our politicians, whether it's at EU level or national level, are aware that we should be facing tremendous threats in the future. Now, the structures are moving to something much more coherent. We're building a sector forum that should be approved probably in the coming days. So we have currently 13 different TCs directly dealing with security issues. Lots of gaps, no overall view. So now we will have it. And we will also develop on subjects that we're not covering yet, subjects as important as cybersecurity or border security or counterterrorism. But at least Ciberani is already covered by my TC. We have a working group too dealing with Ciberani issues. We're looking for a convener. So if anyone is interested, of course, I could give you the information. And I would like to end up my my speech with the following: is that standards are a tool that it's done by the experts who are just dealing with their business and producing their baby that they're going to be using. That standards will be what a standard is what you do or what you want to do or how you want to implement innovation. So I want all kinds of stakeholders. I don't only need the end users. I need the industry. I need the local and national authorities. I need everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Patricia. In the interest of time, I will give the floor to each and every one of the panelists, and then we will take questions and wrap it up. I will give the floor to Victor Voitas, and we're going from DG Home to IDA, and then to Belgium, and then we'll go to the European external aspect of CBRN dealt with by Tristan. Victor.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Victor Voitas. I work in the European Commission in DG Home. And to address Clive's comment, DG Home is coordinating CBRN issues in the European Commission. But it illustrates very well the problem which I wanted to mention, and which was illustrated also very well by example provided by Carlos. So basically, what I think is the biggest issue right now in the CBRN is, of course, it will not solve everything, but the lack of political commitment on basically all levels. So in the past, we had a problem with linking research with end users. I think this is slowly beginning to get better and better, but still, once you get research results, you need someone to decide that it should be pushed further and it should be implemented. So in my unit, which is terrorism and radicalization, we don't deal directly with research. We have Philip to do that. But of course, we suffer from the same problem of lack of political commitment. So, as you may be aware, we had EU CBRN action plan, which was adopted in 2009, and it was supposed to be implemented by the end of 2015. Until today, we don't have any document which would replace this action plan. My Deputy Director General, Mr. Onidi, mentioned in the introductory remarks that we are working on counterterrorism package, and indeed CBRN will be one of the topics included there. But it's been almost 2 years since the expiry of the CBRN action plan. So as long as there is no clear message from the top that CBRN is a priority, it's difficult at your level to do anything to improve drastically the situation. We have comments very often from member states that it would be easier for them if there would be some kind of incentive coming from the European level. So basically European Commission saying, look, member states, you should do something about it. But on the other hand, then we reply to them, look, for us it would be easier if member states could request, please, European Commission, do something about CBRN. So it's a vicious circle of lack of commitment from the highest level. Now, I don't have solution for that, so perhaps as just a policy analyst, I wanted to release my frustration here, but I think it's an actual problem, and of course there are a few member states where the situation is different. Perhaps, I don't know, colleagues from Sweden could confirm that the situation there is perhaps a little bit better than in other member states, but still it's a real issue, and it's very difficult to get to the top level with requests for funding, requests for projects, requests for more staff when it comes to CBRN, especially that it's a difficult topic. It's a complex topic. You have to talk to several people at the member state level, several ministries, in the Commission, to several DGs. So I think I will stop here. And if somebody has a good solution to my problem, I would be happy to hear that. Thank you.
Thank you, Victor. European Defence Agency's frustrations.
Well, thank you very much. My name is Shahzad Ali. I'm from the European Defence Agency. I will not share my frustrations. I think we're actually making some progress in a few areas, and there are still probably a lot of opportunities that we haven't captured yet. But first of all, dear Philippe, dear community of users, ladies and gentlemen, I'm very pleased to be here today, and thank you for the opportunity to sit as part of this roundtable. What I thought I would do was highlighting a few of the activities that we have ongoing now in the European Defence Agency. I'm not sure how familiar you are with EDA, which is the abbreviation I will be using for the rest of the presentation. So the European Commission, the European Defence Agency, and the European Space Agency aim at maximizing complementary and synergy of civilian security, space, and defense-related research activities. This synchronization of R&D investment takes place in the context of the European Framework Cooperation, familiar as EFC for most of you. Some of you may already be familiar with the joint investment program launched by the European Defence Agency, which resulted in 2 calls and 14 projects. This EDA program is overseen by a management committee, which includes a representative from each contributing member state and is chaired by the agency. In this management committee, we have 13 contributing members, meaning we have almost half of the agency or the EU member states participating in the management committee. And then we have the expert management group, where we, for example, have Philippe participating as a member or also receiving all the dissemination of results in those activities. So he's able to see what we are achieving and how we are addressing the problems and what the possible solutions are to that. So I would say 13 contributing members, still underlining that, 12 million euros, not a big budget, but still, and 14 projects is for me a great achievement for addressing specific defense needs. Now, we're almost halfway through the joint investment program on CBRN, and we're looking forward to see the results of the remaining projects before we start planning for the next phase. And EDA is also in the process of updating the CBRN strategic research agenda, which will provide a roadmap for future investments based on the identified and remaining technology gaps and priorities identified with the involvement of member states, ministries of defense, and subject matter experts. Another initiative to further develop CBRN capabilities and services at the European level is the cooperation between EDA and the European Space Agency, ESA. An EDA and ESA workshop was hosted earlier this year to consult experts from cross-cutting domains on the possible role of space services in addressing CBRNE risks. If I remember correctly, we also gave a presentation to this community about the preparations and the process and the cooperation between the European Defence Agency and ESA. So the workshop was aiming at informing the participants of a call for tenders for studies proposing space-based services in support of CBRNE operations. And we are now looking forward to start the evaluation of the proposals this month. Finally, I would like to draw your attention to the EDA Innovation in Defense Challenge. Today, civil and commercial markets are driving innovation in most underlying technologies. That is the reason why EDA is increasingly engaging with non-traditional defense R&T communities and innovators in order to speed up access to emerging and potentially disruptive research results, possibly identifying areas in which additional investments are needed to fully address future capability needs. So EDA will launch later this year in the CBRN area one of the first defense innovation challenges in view of identifying innovative ideas with potential impact either on future defense capabilities or on existing defense capability gaps. So with that, the European Defence Agency will continue supporting member states and provide a broad framework to conduct cooperative research in the fields of basic and applied science to carry technology development up to the level of demonstration projects. And that concludes my introduction. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are we on, Lee? Okay. Hans, the Belgian perspective on CBRN resilience?
So hi everybody, my name is Hans de Neef and I'm working at the Belgian National Crisis Center. Now in Belgium, maybe in Europe, the National Crisis Center has almost a unique position. So we're responsible in Belgium for as well emergency preparedness and crisis management, as for all risks, as well security and safety. And there are a lot of those risks. So this means also that we're responsible for elaboration of emergency plans at the national level, contingency plans, national nuclear and radiological emergency plan, CBRN emergency plan. A lot of plans, nice plans, theoretical plans with parts of implementation and with gaps of implementation. Plans that not always are complementary because there are interactions between a safety plan and a security plan. And as coordinators, we have to bring worlds together. We have to bring the worlds of safety together with the worlds of security. And that's a great challenge, because too many times each and everybody is looking at a problem from his own position, with his own interests. So, but we're a coordination center. The challenge is great, but the problems are great, but we're ready to take them on. Now, from these observations, Carlos made reference to terrorist attacks last year, March 2016. What if this was an attack with CBRN substances? And I have to tell you that even at our National Crisis Center, we don't have all the answers. So we need to look for these answers, and we need to look for these answers in an integrated manner. And now, how to approach this problem? Well, from March on, we have a new Director General, and one of his first actions or decision was we need to, within the National Belgian Crisis Center, create a CBRN expertise center. It's kind of a platform where practitioners, where experts, where developers, where training centers are on a daily basis in the same environment. Now, from these early observations, and so we determined for the moment four main goals for this CBRN expertise centers. Is, of course, first thing is to make more operational our existing emergency contingency plans. And within this operationalization, great attention has to go to training and formation. It's a major gap in preparation for emergency situation. It's a major gap, perhaps on a strategic level, but certainly on the level of the emergency workers. So first point of attention is formation, training and formation of emergency workers. Other goal of this center is when something happens, well, we have a nuclear safety plan. When something happens in a nuclear installation, you still have probably a limited time gap to organize and to react. In other risks, this gap is really very limited, because when we make now evaluation of, and evaluation is already very far, of attacks of 22nd of March, almost all discussion go on a time gap from 19 minutes between the first event and the second event. And what should have been done almost to prevent or to react to the first and to the second event. That's a time gap from 19 minutes where a great deal of discussions are going on. So what we need is when something happens, CBRN emergency situation, security related, is immediate, that CBRN expertise is immediately present at the crisis center. Not in 3-4 hours, immediately, so that decision makers can have immediately contact with these experts. So that's another main goal of our expertise center. Now, research and development, of course, many things have to be organized. Making emergency plans operational, risk analysis, risk identification and analysis, elaboration of emergency plans, elaboration of additional procedures at the level of every actor in these plans, development of specific tools, procedures, strategies, formation, organization of emergency plan exercises. All these things, we consider that support from research and development is possible, but support as far as it is really useful to our organization, how we are organized as an authority to prepare for emergency situations. So in this discussion, so we already had discussions with lots of actors. We had a few discussions with DG Home. So Philippe handed us this really nice manual on all research and development projects on the European level that had been taken place. Now, as far as for myself, I'm in for about 25 years in the domain of the nuclear emergency preparedness, and I looked and I handed the manual to other people from my service already there for 10 or more years, and I have to say this was a new world. So this was a new world. This is, for us, it's a new world, really interesting. So research and development, yes, but in function of what we need. As practitioners on different issues, there's no thing we consider we can't use. Strategies that exist, tools that exist, or that we developed, but we need to be able to use them. So not only research and development, but within the platform on a national level, but certainly there's a need for international collaboration. And as a crisis center, we want, and from this CBRN Expertise Center, we want to collaborate not only on a national level, but certainly on an international level with interaction and collaboration with other crisis centers in Europe. And as I said, in Belgium, responsibilities, security, safety are mainly on the national level within our national crisis center. We know that in other countries this is not organized in the same way. And so what we intend to do is to create a mapping from organizations all over Europe responsible for emergency preparedness and crisis management, as well for security, safety, CBRN, ERIS. That's one of the goals, one of the main goals we want to pursue. But not only collaboration between practice centers, crisis center, but also on the level of collaboration between training center, and there's already much going on. Project of e-notice. Other projects are going on. We will be glad to discover them piece by piece. So also on the level of research and development, we certainly want to pursue an international collaboration. I thank you.
Thank you, Hans. Last but not least, Tristan?
Thank you, Carlos. I am Tristan Simonard. I am in charge of the EU CBRN Centers of Excellence initiative, which operates worldwide in 60 partner countries to the EU. I'm glad to be here. I was not sure if my presence could be useful to this panel, but I realize that it is. I hope it is, and I believe that there are very strong concrete interactions between your community and the work we are carrying out outside the EU, and there are already some concrete examples that we could mention later. But first of all, I'd like to start with two statements. And the first one is that in terms of political landscape, the EU security and defense landscape is changing fast for the moment. And I see there very interesting opportunities for your community in the midterm, and I think you can play, because I think you can play an interesting role from that point of view. Second statement is that in terms of, at least, but even more in terms of international cooperation, for which I am working for the moment, and development, the new motto is that the EU is not anymore a traditional payer for cooperation development activities, but it's also willing to be a player. And this is a strong political message and instruction we received from the top in the last months and year, and I'm sure that it will have significant consequences on our work, on your work, whether it is at the industrial level, academic, political, and other. In terms of interaction between your community of users and the external network of the Centers of Excellence, which is now gathering, as I said, about 60 countries. Last week, Azerbaijan joined the initiative. Last month, Pakistan joined the initiative. We tried to develop a network of CBRN experts, and we tried to enhance the CBRN security and governance in the partner countries willing to do so because it's fully voluntary and bottom-up. And in each country, in each partner country to this initiative, we have established with the country a national team of CBRN experts belonging to all kind of relevant CBRN ministries, covering not only accidental risk, but also natural risk and intentional risk. And this network today is operating, is working on a regional basis. We have 8 regional centers, and it delivers projects, trainings, field exercises, tabletop, etc. And the interesting point for you is that this is a strong EU contribution to the CBRN governance at the international level, very strong because it's a unique network, and it's there to also to be open to the internal side. And we have strong instructions to work on connecting better the internal dimension of the EU and the external dimension in terms of capabilities, in terms of facilities, in terms of experts. And we have started to do so, especially with Philippe and your community, and we will continue. So this is not to be underestimated. And I don't want to be too long because I could start giving different examples. But this is certainly a point where your community has a role to play, bilaterally, multilaterally, at different levels. But we are now working on a stronger connection between the EU existing CBRN networks, whether they're practitioners, law enforcement, industry, academy. And we have our political master behind us, so we are happy to go in that direction because it is our instructions. And so it may have, I believe it will have, and it already has some impact on the work of some of you. So that's all. The external dimension is outside the EU, but I can tell you that there are many connections ongoing, and already especially in the neighborhood, because we have already cross-border activities, trainings, field exercises being organized or that were organized in the last 2 years, bridging together people from the EU inside and the outside of the EU. That's, I would like to stop now and to leave you some time for discussions. I would like to add something. It's a minor point, but for your information, we have an open vacation for a CBRN expert in our unit coming from an EU member state. It's a seconded national expert position, usually taken by an official from a member state. In some countries, according to the bilateral agreements with the European Commission, it may also be someone from the academic, from the non-profit industry, etc. So, for your information, thank you.
Thank you, Tristan. Thank you all. I open the floor for discussion. It's time for you to... There is a question in the back. Where is the mic? All the way back, Philippe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have 2 questions. First of all, the arrogance of the human nature and the egoism are the creators of any kind of disaster. So we see this in Japan, which they are almost perfect, and we have a very big problem with the nuclear station over there, which nobody speaks about the radiation on the ocean, especially on the east coasts of the United States and Canada. So the question is, here in Belgium, which is a very well-organized country, and the manuals are not enough because we have to deal with the prevention and not when something occurs. Lately, the Germans in Aachen, they are going to give the pills of iodium to 500,000 citizens because of the nuclear station over there. There are some questions which the lady from the European nuclear power stations last week, she responded me that there is no problem. They have the United Nations certification, the Commission certification, that there is no problem. But the Germans, they are saying, and they are not allowed to inspect the power station, that there are 1,000 cracks on the core, on the steel core of the power station, because the power station, you know, it's Belgium thing, but in Europe, if something happens, it comes up to Turkey. So it's very important for us to know exactly what's going on, because nobody gives an exact answer. The pills of iodium are very dangerous when there is no reason. When the Germans, which we respect all of them because of they are working properly and they are very careful, they are giving pills, it's something happening. The second question is, I have direct communication with Libya, with local cities, authorities, and as they have camp concentrations, these are what exactly they are, of immigrants from Africa over there, and these are being guarded by missionaries. They are telling me that between the people which are gathered over there, there are ISIS and other terrorists, guys, which they know them. But for their surprise, some of the local authorities, I don't want to be more specific, they are telling me that these guys, they are left to come to Europe. And there are some organizations which they are paying in indirect ways for their income. What are we going to do?
Well, I would like you to focus on the Siberian resilience topic, because otherwise we are here until tomorrow, if you allow me. For the other questions, maybe you will have debate with the panelists over lunchtime, so that we can, because we have very little time. What do you want? You want to have everybody posing questions and then you ask the panelists to respond, or do they respond one by one? One by one.
One by one.
Yeah.
Who are you asking the question, by the way?
Yeah.
Who's picking up the question?
So the hot potato is for you, Hans.
Hans?
I'm not sure I got the question. Okay, if it's about local authorities and how this maybe emergency situations, because I heard something about the cracks, so I make comparison with some issues that are going on with Belgian nuclear power plants. Of course, local authorities are part of what we call, on a national level, here in Belgium, we try to change mindsets about emergency preparedness. Because often we hear, yeah, for that type of risk you have a bottom-up approach, for that type of risk you have a top-down approach. So we're trying to change this in what's a very more useful word as an integrated approach. So this will mean that by risk you have to see what's the best authority to deal with it and how other authorities can sustain each other in a complementary way. Now, part of this system are, of course, local authorities, even for nuclear risk about nuclear power plants, where in Belgium it's so that decisions about countermeasures are taken on a national level. We don't exclude the local level, because in our coordination structures at the national levels, they are invited to be present in the evaluations of what is going on, but also in preparation of decision making and in follow-up, and even to a certain degree they have certain autonomy to take some measures themselves, for as far as they are prepared to inform the federal of the national authorities about them. Now, on safety issues, as I said, complementary collaboration between authorities, as we're talking for prevention. I heard something about the cracks in nuclear power plants. It's an issue for two of our reactors, one in Doel and one in Tihange. We have a safety authority in Belgium that's responsible to investigate these sorts of problem. And they have a large responsibility in this. And they're not working on their own, because they are working in an international framework with other regulators in other countries that make inspections in the Belgian nuclear power plants, and they are connected also with other people. So, as far as the National Crisis Center, and that's what we are, first mainly responsible for emergency preparedness and crisis management, this goes further where prevention stops, where prevention and the residual risk ends. So in our collaboration, of course, our regulatory authority is responsible, and we are working on a daily basis with them.
Thank you much.
Oh, thank you very much, Hans. I would like actually to come back to this topic of the roundtable. This is, if you want to have more details, please speak with Hans at the. Yeah, but we are far from the roundtable topic. I'm sorry. I would like to come back to the issues which is Siberian resilience, supporting and coordination needs. And for the others, I will encourage you to speak with the panelists separately from the room. There are other questions to the panelists on the topics of the roundtable, please.
There's an apparent blurring between the defense CBRN research and what I would call DG Home civil security CBRN research. Does DG Home and EDA work closely to work out research topics? And should we be linking to the EDA research projects and potentially the PADRA projects, which include CBRN, as part of the cluster?
Who's picking up the question? Victor? Shazad?
Well, just to start with, I would say that many of the activities, as you probably know, research and development is long-term activities, so it takes a lot of time before the needs are identified and addressed, and then drafting the proposals, putting together the consortiums, finishing the research, and then understanding the results, and then finding out what to do with the results at a national level. So that's up to the Ministries of Defense. And I've only been here in Brussels for 1 year. So I would say that what we are doing now, what we're seeing, is the research taking its time to show what's possible and what the needs are and how we're solving the issues. And then at a later time, of course, in the future, now with the preparatory action on defense research, we see some more opportunities to engage better. Our research in the European Defence Agency is based on the needs that the Ministries of Defence have. So, I mean, there might be other needs that should be addressed, of course, where we should look into the future. But right now, we have some activities at our, I would say, European level, it's taking its time to mature.
Thank you very much. I will make actually a plea to encircle. You know, you will have a lot of research and innovative action in CBRN that may have some bridges with EDA-related projects. So I would encourage you to dig this for the Commission to see whether indeed we can establish possible synergies. The willingness is there. Very often it's the time resource which is lacking, so we are working very closely together with EDA, but very often, specifically from project to project, we have difficulties to follow everything. This is the main problem, but we have to organize this, and with Shazad, we already discussed about this, and it will come. So, further questions? Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. I have a question which is more related to the medical aspect of CBRN. So in terms of building the prevention capabilities in case you have an attack, you usually have quite specific drugs that you would need to develop or stockpile in a government. I've mainly worked in the US previously, as you might hear. And there, you know, this has been done for 10, 15 years under BARDA and the CDC. And I'm curious, especially from France and Belgium, to understand a bit how you look at the medical aspect of CBRN. Thank you.
This is a vast question.
That's quite an interesting question. So of course, preparation in Belgium, we have strategic structures, we have operational structures, and this preparation goes together with responsible services of the Department of Public Health, as well on a strategic as an operational level. So as far as for these issues, also as for other operational domains, specific preparations you need to take them. So you need to prepare them. So in Belgium, in a general way, for all types of risks, we have what we call a monodisciplinary plan. This is the organization of, in Belgium, for example, for all medical aspects, this is one discipline that is organized to provide immediate actions, capacities in the medical field, and they have to organize themselves. They have them organize themselves for all types of risk within a greater structure. They have to organize themselves for a number of specific risks, and CBRN are one of these clusters of risks where there can be, or where it's perhaps it's necessary that some specific actions can be useful or needed. So for example, we recently had a World Health Organization peer review. Part of this peer review was radiological emergencies. So what we did, what Department of Public Health did, they gave, for example, example of their organization, their capacities, their interactions, not with other discipline, in a multidisciplinary way. But mainly that's how we are organized, and that's mainly, it's a responsibility of the Department of Public Health, together with other organizations, and certainly those who coordinate those kind of initiatives, and one, of course, the National Crisis Center is involved in that.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, well, I would like to...
I just want to comment on that. I just finished... I can complement the answer, but I will give you the... Yes, please.
Yes, of course, it's a whole chain. So, as my colleague said, hospitals are involved and just part of the process, and they're trained and equipped, and we do exercise. This is how we cope with situation. Of course, we have to take care of the victims, of potential victims, and this is part of the preparedness. So everybody's is already on board. We also do something specific in CENTEC 391, which is enhancing security in the healthcare facilities by the way we focus on the way we manage NRBC substances that are used for health purposes, so that they are well managed and that they are not taken by someone who shouldn't have them. So we have standards on this too.
Thank you.
Thank you, Patricia.
We have 10 minutes before people start to enter into syncope due to starving. So please, if we have other comments, yeah, please, questions?
Yeah, thank you. Mathieu Branla from SINTEF in Norway, and I work in DRS7 Darwin, in which we're developing guidelines for crisis management, for resilience management in the context of crisis. So my question is about standardization, because it's an interesting topic, but I find very challenging as well. We have partners from Italy, from Israel, from Sweden, so very diverse countries. We have partners from healthcare. We have partners from ATM, so air traffic management, so a highly regulated domain, work domain, or a much less regulated work domain. So the heterogeneity of practices, of cultures, etc., in all those domains, in all those countries, make it very difficult to make very practical and homogenized guidelines. So how do you deal with it? How do you address that through standards?
I understand that. Are you from Norway? Where do you do these standards? In which body? Because I don't get it.
It's part of a DRS7 project. financed by the European Commission.
Yes.
So the project is in the second year, and we're developing those guidelines for the European level.
And then you would like to have standardization outcomes because you've been doing some standardization work already. Is that what you mean?
Probably,
yes. Yes. Okay. So we should look at what you do because it's depending on the subject. You would like to have it. You should have it treated in this TC or the other one, or you might have a joint working group. You don't know. It really has to be looked at closely. Maybe we can discuss this later on, but this is a key issue, you see, because if we want following up from EU-funded projects, now we know that we should not wait until the project is done, because nothing happens then. What you should be done is just what you said, is within the life of the project. As soon as something might look eligible for standardization, take contact and look at it closely, and then the standardization community could help you. But again, it's an expert work, so we would also need your implication. We should make sure that we have all relevant stakeholders on board, and also regarding all the sectors needed and all the countries needed in order to make sure that when the standards is issued after a few years of work, that's something that people will use because it's their own tool. You see, so maybe let's keep in touch, and then I will explain you precisely how to do this. But just what I told is also works for just any other project or any other item.
Yeah, thank you very much, Patricia. Well, there is actually a discussion about a roadmap that needs to be clarified, and we are working very closely with SEN, and it will be discussed this afternoon in the framework of a project called Resistance. So we are working on that because we know that there are indeed some difficulties for research projects to enter into this arena of standardization. Any more, new burning questions? Because we are closely, Teresa, you can, thank you.
My name's Dennis Davis from International Fire and Rescue Association, and it really follows on this standardisation issue around CBRN particularly, quite apart from the conflict that I get between Victor and Tristan about the politics of whether or not there is a political imperative to all this. Most of the CBRN capability that exists, and I think it was picked up by the Defence Agency, Salam, is there because there is a predictability, there is a risk. The army or whatever is prepared for a particular event, nuclear industry has been well regulated for so long. But what we're now facing is a different sort of environment where that's, in a sense, spilled out onto the streets. And we can't quite be sure as to what the next threat will be. And the problem I think we have is a lot of these assets, a lot of this training that is well established and well enforced exists, but somehow it's not held together. And the standardization process, in fact, can work against it because it puts it back into silos. Whereas what we're really looking for, I suspect, and I'm a practitioner from that sort of perspective, is something, a framework, a roadmap is perhaps the research words, but at the operational, the practical end, you're looking for frameworks, protocols, procedures that enable you to take a German, Belgian, Dutch systems and integrate them and use them on the street, literally within an hour of an event. And I'm just wondering what the panel, who is doing to try and move that agenda forward.
Thank you. Volunteers. Patricia?
Well, that's a very good question. Of course, you have to look at who's doing the standard and for what purpose. And my perspective is the people in charge of social security, which are many partners, but at the end, it's the end users, it's the firefighters, it's the police, it's the policy makers. So who is pushing for doing such standards? DG Home, the Commission, but some countries, some cities, some firefighters organizations, but there is no general policy of pushing. This is why I asked Commissioner King if he intended to help us push standardization in order to enhance resilience in the European Union. And he said, yes, of course, this is a way to do it. But this is what I'm doing currently is try to raise awareness of everyone that, you know, this is something that you can do, that can make things work, that can bring solutions that are workable for everyone. And if we're clever enough, we won't lose anything. I understand your concern about standards make it more difficult. Yes, if you have too many standards and they're not relevant, and it makes sense. But if you just take it and you look at the situation, then you will, of course, regarding everybody's regulation, find the operational system that will allow everyone to work together. This is what we want to achieve, be able to work together in order to fulfill what our mission is.
Thank you very much, Patricia. Commissioner King has listened to you. You will see in the work program 2018-20 that there will be a reply to your question. Carlos, are you some last concluding words to say before we can enjoy lunch?
Before we break for lunch, I want to thank the panelists by giving them an applause. And I think this is a work in progress, and we are here, and this is going to be a 9th community of users, and we can keep this moving on in the right direction. I just want to point out that we have just finished the recommendation on CBRN stockpiles for Belgium through the Ministry of Health. So there are plans in place, and they're going to be deployed, and they're going to be organized. And this is just complementing the answer of Hans to your question. Thank you very much. I wish you a happy lunch. Don't drink too much because there is a very challenging sessions in the afternoon, and I look forward to seeing you again.